What's going on YouTube? Today I'm bringing you guys a new YouTube video, and today we're going to be talking about Sakashima and Kodama of the East Tree pairing. This pairing is actually really brutal and is a lot of fun. So this deck is it's not your typical deck where it's just like Simic good stuff. The whole theme of this deck is a lot of clones. So we have a lot of value creatures and then a lot of clones to where either A, we can copy our own creatures, or B, if someone else has something fun out, we can copy that. And because of Sakashima, you can keep copying it over and over and over and over. And it doesn't matter if it's legendary or not. So just to break it down, first up we got Sakashima. You may have Sakashima 1,000 Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima's abilities. It says the legend rule does not apply to permanents you control. So this allows us to keep copying legendary things and have a lot of crazy stuff happen. And then Kodama has Reach. It's a 6/6. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So another little cool interaction is if you copy Kodama with Sakashima, you get to play something, and then it just keeps bouncing back and forth. So if the first thing you drop is like a 6-drop, and that's the highest thing, and then you can just dump the rest of your hand because this one sees it. This one's trigger happens, and then when you play it, this thing sees its trigger, and then you play something, and this thing sees that one's trigger, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool interaction, or lots of cool things you can do with these two together. So first up, we'll get with our creatures. So first creature we got, Birds of Paradise. Kind of a staple in anything like this, adds a blue or a green. Got Llanowar Elves, Arbor Elf. All of these just to kind of, accelerate us to where we can start playing crazy stuff earlier. Last of our dorks is Elvish Mystic. One of the first fun things that we can target, making a ton of, is Ruin Crab. So Ruin Crab has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. So as you can tell, we make like 10 of these guys and play a land, everyone's milling 30. So this is just a little start to what's about to come, but it's a lot of fun. Next we got Coiling Oracle. This is just a value creature. Simic for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise draw. We don't usually want to copy this, but I mean, if there's nothing better to do, or if you just need ramp or card draw, you can just keep copying this guy over and over. Like, you'll get value out of him one way or another. Next we got Snapcaster Mage. This is just a very good card in general. Snapcaster Mage, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 flash. When he enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until the end of turn. The flashback is equal to the mana cost, so any of our instants and sorceries that we need again, just play him, you get to play it again. Our first clone of the deck, we got Phantasmal Image, 1 and a blue. You may have Phantasmal Image into the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an illusion in addition to its other types, and it gains when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So Phantasmal Image is just really good. 1 and a blue just to copy anything we want. 2 mana just to have whatever they have, or another one of what we got. Next we got Scavenging Ooze. This kind of helps us with the utility and makes it to where it shuts down graveyard-based decks or any crazy stuff that's happening. Also, we get to gain a little bit of life. You don't usually want to make copies of Scavenging Ooze because it's kind of irrelevant having multiples, but yeah. So we got Scavenging Ooze. So 1 and a green, 2/2, pay a green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it's a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on it and gain a life. So yeah, this card's really just in here to keep other decks in check. Next we got Farhaven Elf for 2 and a green for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. If we need to ramp, this is an easy thing to target over and over with our clones. Just lets us keep getting more and more lands. Next we got Eternal Witness. This lets us recur anything we need again, land, creature, instant, sorcery, whatever we need. So for 1 and 2 green, you get a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So another thing that you can just keep copying over and over and over and over and over, and then you just keep getting cards back and just outvalue everyone. Next up, we got one of our win conditions in this deck. We've got Biovisionary. So for 1 and Simic, You get a 2/3 at the beginning of the end step. If you control 4 or more creatures named Biovisionary, you win the game. So this is not as you can tell, this is not a very EDH friendly card, because you can only run one ofs in any deck for EDH. So people don't really, when they see this guy, they're gonna be like, "What the heck? Like, what's the point of that?" But like I said, we're running a clone deck, so we can literally just play him and then just copy, 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 and then go to our end step and win the game. So this guy will hit you out of nowhere, and it's actually very good in this deck. It's really funny to win EDH games with a card like that. Next, we got Dryad of the Elysian Grove. For 2 and a green, you get a 2/4. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Lands you control are every basic land type. So essentially in this deck, all of our lands are forests and islands in addition to whatever they're doing. So that's good. Next, we got another win condition, Laboratory Maniac. For 2 and a blue, you get a 2/2. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game. There's ways we get a lot of mana, and we need some way to win usually, so we can just deck ourselves and win. Next, we got Glasspool Mimic, 2 and a blue for a clone. You may have it into the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it is this in addition to it is Glasspool Mimic in addition to its other types, or it's a rogue. Sorry, it's a shapeshifter rogue, not Glasspool Mimic. So yeah, just another clone. Also, it's a land on the back, so if we are really hurting for land, we can just choose to focus. We can choose to play it as a land instead. Next up, we got another pretty good target for cloning, Risen Reef. So for 1 and Simic, you get a 1/1. When it or another elemental creature enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. If it's not, put it into your hand. So this is another interesting one, where the more you clone it, the better each one gets, because each of them will see the new elemental entering, and then each of them will trigger. So, it just gets better and better the more you copy it. Next up, we got Gadwick the Wizened, I don't know. X and triple blue, you get a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, draw X cards. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent and opponent controls. So, like I said, this is a deck where we can get a lot of mana, and this is essentially just a card draw spell and then utility afterwards, where we can tap their stuff. He's pretty good. You don't usually want to copy him, but yeah, he's just solid card draw. Next, we got Clever Impersonator. This one's in German, but essentially, this can enter the battlefield as any non-land permanent. So this thing could be a planeswalker, enchantment, artifact, creature, whatever, for 4 mana. Just a solid card. If they have something you want, you get one too. Just a solid card. Next, we got Phyrexian Metamorph. So for 3 and 1 Phyrexian, so really it's just 3. You may have it into the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or creature onto the battlefield, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. This card's insane. Any artifact or creature, obviously. If you want it, it's yours. So, solid card. Next, we got Spark Double. For 3 and a blue, you get a 0/0 creature. You may have Spark Double enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature or planeswalker you control, except it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature. It enters with an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker, and it isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary. So this is essentially like a Sakashima or a baby Sakashima. It just makes it to where whatever you copy, you can have 2 of. So this card's actually insane. Next, we've got Alter Ego. For X2 and Simic, you get a clone. This cannot be countered. You may have Altered Ego enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. So this is another situation where if we get a lot of mana, you just make a 50/50 clone of whatever you want, which is pretty solid. Next, we got Vizier of Many Faces. It's 2 and 2 blue for a clone. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except if Vizier of Many Faces was embalmed, the token has no mana cost. It's white and a zombie in addition to its other types. So for 4, you get a copy, and then when it dies, you can embalm it to copy something else again. And then it's just a token. It's not really this anymore. So you just get 2 clones for 1 card, so it just keeps recurring itself. Very good. Next we got Rashmi. 2 in Simic, you get a 2/3. Whenever you cast your first spell on each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell's, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast it, put it into your hand. Rashmi's she's just a solid Simic creature. I mean, you don't really want to. I mean, you can copy her and just keep getting lots of triggers, but she's just a quality creature. Next, we have another fun one to clone. We got Tuvasa, Benthic Druid, 3 in Simic for a 3/3. When a land enters under the battlefield under your control, gain a life and draw a card. Make a ton of copies of this, and you just play a land, draw 10 cards, gain 10 life. This card's nuts. Next, we got Thragtusk. So for 4 and a green, you get a 5/3 beast. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. When it dies, you get a 3/3 beast token. So, you keep cloning this dude, you're gonna gain a ton of life, and then if they do like board wipe or something, if it gets out of control, you get all those 3/3 beasts that replace themselves. So, just a quality creature. Next, we've got Peregrine Drake. So for 4 and a blue, you get a 2/3 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, untap 5 lands. As you'll see shortly, this is relevant because there's ways how we can make our lands tap for a lot more than what they should, and then untapping 5 lands is really like untapping 50,000 lands, and you'll see in a minute. But Peregrine Drake's really good. Next we got Karuga, the Macro Sage. So for 3 and 2 hybrid blue-green, you get a 5/4. You get a 5/4 dinosaur hippo. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with converted mana cost 3 or greater. So when we keep copying things, I mean, unless they're tokens, it doesn't count. But this card, especially if we keep copying this card, we draw a load of cards. Krug is very good and lets us keep refilling our hand and just keep dumping more and more and more and more. And then you just copy it again and draw even more cards and then dump more and more and more. So very good. Next up's one of my favorite inclusions. It's one of the newer cards from Strixhaven. We have Wandering Archaic. So for 5, you get a 4/4 avatar. When an opponent casts an instant or sorcery, they may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets. So this thing is absolutely insane. If someone takes an extra turn and they can't pay for it, he copies it, and then you get to take the extra turn before they do. Or if it's, rampant growth, you get a rampant growth. And then if we keep copying this, each of them triggers. So Wandering Archaic is absolutely brutal if they can't pay for the tax. There's also really fun interactions where if people need your help, or if someone's going a little too crazy, they can kill something, choose not to pay 2 if you kill something else again, and you just keep one player in check. But yeah, Wandering Archaic is absolutely insane. Next we got Teferi, Mage of Zalfir. So for 2 and triple blue, you get a 3/4 flash. Creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield have flash. This lets us flash in a bunch of clones instant speed. It's actually this is a very oppressive card. Not fun to play against, but this helps us keep some people in check and also have some fun with our clones. Each opponent can only cast spells anytime they could cast a sorcery. So no one can counter any of your stuff, essentially. So nothing, no funny business. Not a fun card to play against, but we're not here to make friends. Next up, we got Acidic Slime. So 3 and 2 blue, you get a 2/2 Death Touch. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. Copying this over and over and over, you could really punish a player, or just get a metric buttload of value. You just keep copying it, blow up lands if you want to be mean, blow up artifacts, enchantments, whatever you need to do. Whatever's oppressing you, you can do it. Next up, we got our 6 drops. So we got 4 and 2 blue for a 3/1 flash, Sakashima's Protege. Got Cascades. When you cast it, you get to flip from the top until you get a permanent with lesser converted mana cost, and you get to play it for free. When it enters the battlefield, you may have this enter the battlefield as a copy of any permanent that entered the battlefield this turn. So whatever you cascade into, you can copy, and then also if you played something before, this thing can copy that, and you also get to cascade. Pretty good card. Next we got Progenitor Mimic. So for 4 and Simic, you get a Shapeshifter. You may have Progenitor Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except it has at the beginning of your upkeep. If this creature isn't a if this creature isn't a token, create a token that's a copy of this creature. So, we just copy something and then each turn we just get to keep copying and copying and copying and copying. So, if we want to copy what's it called? Acidic Slime, each turn you're just popping something in, popping something again. So Progenitor Mimic's a really fun card and just keeps getting more and more value the longer it stays out. Next, we got Nezahal, the Primal's Tide. 5 and 2 blue, you get a 7/7. It can't be countered. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card, and you can pay 3. You can discard 3 cards to flicker this guy. Nezahal is absolutely insane. I will say, I've said it once, say it again. This card's absolutely just when it hits, it's such a pain in the ass to get rid of that it's insane. I don't know why it's only a couple bucks, but Nezahal is absolutely brutal. And then you can copy it with Sakashima and other things, and then you just keep getting, they've cast like Brainstorm, and you have 5 of these out, you draw 5 cards. Like, Nezahal just gets crazy. Next up, we've got Diluvian Primordial. So for 5 and 2 blue, you get a 5/5 flying. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile it. So this card is nuts. You play it once, you get to cast something from each player, and then we copy it and cast something from each player, and you just keep doing it, and you just keep casting everything over and over and over. This card doesn't look very crazy, but especially in this deck, it gets wild. Next we got Protein Hulk. So for 5 and 2 green, you get a 6/6. When it dies, search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less. Put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. This essentially lets us get a bunch of clones and one thing to copy and just copy it a bunch. Or if someone else has something out or we have something, we just get a bunch of clones and just copy all of them to that. So Protein Hulk just gives us like essentially like 4 or 5 creatures for free. Next we got Coma Cosmos Serpent. This card is absolutely busted. For 3, 2 blue, 2 green, you get a 6/6. It can't be countered. At the beginning of your upkeep, each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Coma's Coil. Sacrifice another serpent, choose 1. Tap target permanent is activated. Abilities cannot be activated this turn. Or Coma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until the end of turn. As you can tell with the whole theme of this deck, if we can copy this thing, it is impossible, literally impossible for anyone to interact with us or just, do anything. Because there was a game the other day where my brother was playing this deck and he had like 3 of these out, and each turn he gets 3 more coils, 3 more coils, 3 more coils, and then he copies it with like rights of replication and then gets like a ton of. It's just insane. Coma is busted in this deck, and it's just a busted card in general. Next up, we've got Nyx Bloom Ancient. This is the way how we get a ton of mana. 4 and triple green for a 5/5 trample. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. So, if we made a copy of this, and it gets nuts. If we made 5 copies of this, like, you just get a ton of mana, essentially, because everything just triples and triples and triples and triples, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, you tap 1 blue for like 100,000 blue, and then you tap a green, and you get 100,000 green, and then you play Peregrine Drake, and untap all 5 lands, and you get 50,000 more. It's just, this card gets nuts. And the last of our creatures, we've got Sphinx of the Second Sun. 6 and 2 blue for a 6/6 flying. At the beginning of post-combat main phase, you get an additional beginning main phase after this phase. This phase includes untap, upkeep, draw. So essentially it's an extra turn, but without attacking. But it's all the good stuff of the extra turns instead of I would much rather untap, upkeep, draw an additional time instead of attacking. But as you can tell, we just copy it, and each of the things triggers, and it's just more and more and more. This card's absolutely busted in this kind of a deck. But yeah, that's our creatures. Next up, we don't run a lot, but these are the artifacts we run. Obviously, we run Soul Ring, just a standard artifact ramp. Talisman of Curiosity, and then our last one, we've got Lithoform Engine. Oh gosh, Lithoform Engine, 4 mana for legendary artifact. Pay 2, copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Pay 3 and tap it. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Pay 4, copy target permanent spell you control. So when we play anything, we literally just tap this and make a copy of it. Literally, it just follows the whole theme of the deck. Copies triggered abilities, copies anything we play. Card's great. Now we're going to move on to our instance. So first up, we got Veil of Summer. This lets us protect our creatures from, any sort of removal, any counter spells. Just it's a little insurance policy for us. Next, we got Brainstorm for 1 blue, draw 3, put any 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Standard, good card. Next, we got Once Upon a Time, 1 and a green. It's an instant. If this was the first spell you've cast this game, cast it for free. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal a creature or land card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in any order. This card's great. Next, we got Heroic Intervention for 1 and a green. You get to make all of your creatures gain indestructible and hexproof until the end of turn. Really good card. Lets us protect our board from board wipes. Next, we got Pull from Tomorrow, just another way to refill our hand once we dump it. X and 2 blue for an instant, draw X cards and discard a card. Next Bloom Ancient, draw our whole deck, play Lab Man, flash this back, whatever you got to do. Next, we got Cyclonic Rift, 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, and then you can overload it. Yeah, obviously, Cyclonic Rift is just a staple. Next, we got one of our new cards from Strixhaven, Double Major. You got Simic. So Simic, you get an instant. Copy target creature spell you control, except it isn't legendary if the spell is legendary. So when you cast a creature, you play this to copy it. And you get a Sakashima ability, essentially. This card is nuts. Just for 2 extra mana, you get an additional one that's not legendary. It's just... oh, man. It's just crazy. Next, we got Simic Charm. For Simic, you get to choose 1. Target creature gets +3/+3 until the end of turn. Or creatures you control gain hexproof, which is usually the one we go with. Or return target creature to its owner's hand. So we don't really use the +3/+3. It doesn't really come into play that often. We usually give our stuff hexproof or return something back. But, card's pretty good. Next, we have Blue Sun Zenith. Another way we can either kill someone or win the game. Triple blue and X. Target player draws X cards. Shuffle this back into the owner's library. Get a ton of mana. Just keep decking each player or draw your whole deck, whatever you want. Next, we got Crackling Counterpart. 1 and 2 blue for an instant. Create a token that's a copy target creature you control. Then it's got flashback. Just keep going with our clones theme. Just copy something. Later on, you get to flash it back. Even more value. Card's great. Next, we got Fact or Fiction, 3 and a blue for an instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other pile into your graveyard. Just a great instant. And the last instant, we got Dig Through Time, 6 and 2 blue with Delve. Each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this pays for 1. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand, the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. Let's just dig for anything we need. Anything specific that we're looking for, and then we can snapcast it back. It's a really good card. Next, we got our sorceries. First up, we got Sylvan Scrying. Let's just look for any land we need, put it into our hand, and then we can play it. It's a great card. Next, we got Curse of the Swine. This card's actually really good. I don't know why people don't play it. Curse of the Swine says X and 2 blue, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller gets a 2/2 boar. The exile clause is very relevant, and then you just kill a bunch of things with a bunch of mana, and everyone gets pigs. Next, we got Explore, 1 and a green. You may play an additional land this turn, and then draw a card. A little bit of card ramp, a little bit of card draw. It's great. Next, we got one of our all-stars in the deck, Eldritch Evolution. As an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card, convert a mana cost 2 or or X or less, where X is 2+ the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost, so we can go up with it or down with it. Put the card into the battlefield, exile this card. All of these sacrifice to tutors, nuts, birthing pod, that, neoform, whatever. They're all insane. Next, we got Whelming Wave for 2 and 2 blue. Return all creatures to their owner's hands except for krakens, leviathans, octopuses, and serpents. We have Coma. We have a lot of things that would not get bounced, and this is a card that we can just copy our stuff a bunch, return everyone else's stuff, and then kill everyone. Whelming Wave is actually a very good card. It's like a baby Cyclonic Rift, essentially, depending on our board state. Next, we've got Rites of Replication. For 2 and 2 blue, you get and kicker of 5. You may pay an additional 5 as you cast a spell to kick it. Put a token on the battlefield that's a copy target creature. For 4, okay, so it's not bad. If it's kicked, put 5 of those tokens onto the battlefield instead. So, as you can tell, with literally any creature in here, if this is kicked, it is nuts. Like, you just get so much value for 9 mana. Which it's not hard to get 9 mana in this deck because you just keep cloning whatever you need. So, card's really great. Next, we got Talent of the Telepath. For 2 and 2 blue, you get a sorcery. Target opponent reveals the top 7 cards of their library. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from among them without paying the mana cost. Then that player puts the rest into their graveyard. Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard, you may cast up to 2 revealed instant or sorcery cards instead of 1. Usually, we are going to get the Spell Mastery, and then we pick a player who's like a Spell Slinger deck, and we just cast it for free. It's, sometimes it whiffs, but when it's great, it's great. When it's not great, it's not great. So, yeah, good card. Next, we got Sakashima's Will. For 3 and a blue, choose 1. If you control your commander, you can choose both. Target opponent chooses a creature they control, and you gain control of it, so we get to steal something. So if one person has like a Voltron deck, you just target them, they have to give you their creature. Or if someone else has got a lot of crazy stuff, you can take it. And then choose a creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until the end of turn. So more wild stuff happens when you turn legendary stuff into non-legendary, and all of your creatures become that. So, if you have like 30 creatures out because you keep cloning stuff and Rites of Replication, and then you play this on a Ruin Crab and turn all 30 of your creatures into Ruin Crabs and play a land or like a fetch land and crack it, everyone's milling, 90 cards per each land. So, this card that's just a little example of one of the crazy things you can do with it. Next up, we got Seasons Past. This is a very annoying card for everyone that you're playing against. Return any number of cards with different converted mana cost from your graveyard to your hand. Put this on the bottom of the owner's library. Seasons Past just lets us recur every problem or whatever we've played throughout the game, refill our hand, and go crazy again. Next, we got Saheeli's Artistry. For 4 and 2 blue. Choose 1 or both. Create a token that's a copy of target artifact. Create a token that's a copy of target creature, except it's an artifact in addition. If anything would be cut from this deck, this is the first thing to go, but card's still good. You just get to copy an artifact and a creature. So, solid card. Next, we got Stolen Identity. For 4 and 2 blue, you get a sorcery. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target artifact or creature, which is great. And then you get to Decipher it. You may exile this card and encode it onto a creature you control. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller creates a copy of the encoded card without paying a mana cost. So if we, have a 1/1 flyer and we copy a Grave Titan, so we get the Grave Titan, and then we swing at someone with our 1/1 flyer, and then we cast this again, and we get the Grave Titan again, and then you just keep going. Every time that creature hits, you get another creature. So card gets crazy if people can't deal with it. Next up, we got Karn's Temporal Sundering. 4 and 2 blue for a legendary sorcery. You can't cast it unless you control a legendary permanent or a planeswalker, but we're going to have that. So target player takes next turn after this one. Return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Exile this card. Extra turn lets us set up for the win and then take an extra turn and kill everyone. It's a very good card. Next, we got Treasure Cruise. 7 and a blue. for delve, helps us cast it. Draw 3 cards. Treasure Cruise is just quality card. I'm gonna save this one for last. We're gonna go out of order. Temporal Trespass for 8 and triple blue with delve. Take an extra turn after this one. Exile this card. Again, it lets us set up to kill everyone. Take an extra turn, then kill everyone. And then lastly, this is one of our spicy win cons that no one plays. We got Clone Legion. So for 7 and 2 blue, for each creature target player controls, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So there are plenty of ways how we kill everyone. For example, like a Scoot Swarm. Like if people have a ton of Scoot Swarms or something, and we just copy them, or let's say like someone has a bunch of creatures that like enable haste or something, we get a bunch of them and then just kill everyone. Like this card is absolutely insane. Because there'll be times where we can like cast it and then get it back, cast it again, flash it back, cast it again. Like you just keep recurring this card. It just gets absolutely nuts. But that's a really fun way to win. And lastly, we're on the lands. So first up, we got field. Let's do it like this. We got Field of Ruin. Quality card. Just pay 2, destroy land. Each player gets a basic land that they need. It's just a good card. Next, we got Ash Barrens. Adds a generic, has basic land cycling. If we need something, we can just tutor for it. Next, we got Ghost Quarters. Destroy problem land. You and that player get to look for a basic land. Next, we got Waterlogged Grove. It's a pain land that you can sacrifice it to draw a card if you really need to. Next, we got Hinterland Harbor. It's a check land. If you have a basic forest or island, it comes out untapped. We got Breeding Pool. Just a shock land, enters battlefield, tapped unless you pay 2 life. Very good. We got Temple of Mystery. It's a scry land, enters tapped, you get to scry 1. Not the greatest, but I mean, sometimes it's great. Then we got Yavimaya Coast. Literally a pain land, but you can choose to not pay life if you don't need to. Next, we got Lumbering Falls, enters battlefield tapped. You can tap it for blue or green, or you can pay 4 to make it a 3/3 elemental with hexproof. That doesn't really come into play a lot, but when it does, it's pretty good. Next, we got Castle Vantress, enters battlefield tapped unless you control an island, which usually we will always control an island. Adds a blue, and then you can pay 4 and scry 2. Late game, this card's great. Next, we got our basic lands. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 forests, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 islands. So yeah, that's the deck tech for Kodama and Sakashima. Like I said, this deck is it's always something different. Every time you play it, you get a different game. It never gets, it's never repetitive because you can either copy Ruin Crab 30 times or copy, there's just so many things you can do with this deck. And then it also depends on who you're playing against, because you can copy their creature and then copy that creature 30 times. This deck is always different and it's never the same ever. There's just a lot of really cool things you can do with it. And if you guys are looking for a deck that is like that, it's just a lot of fun, always something different, this is definitely a deck you should consider. Also, if you guys have any suggestions or questions, just leave them in the comments below. And yeah, that's the Sakashima Kodama deck tech.